Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. All right, I think we're ready to begin. Yes, praise the Lord. Hey, Dennis. You saw Ernie? Dennis, did you see Ernie? Praise God. Okay, we can definitely get started now. With all seriousness, I am Tarnisha Clyde, the president, founder, CEO of the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce. It is my honor and privilege to have you all as our guests today. And I want to start by talking about a dream. I had a dream that my two daughters, the women and the beautiful daughter that she is, my little Reina, could one day be able to run for president and win that office. I have a dream that when they are in that place of office, that people will not judge them by the color of their skin, but solely by the content of their character. I have a dream that my grandson, I'm so thankful for that grandbaby, but however, it does scare me that I have this little black baby that is here that could be swept away just by walking through a community or running through a community. I have a dream that if he's in a car and stopped by someone, that he's not taken away because they're afraid of him because of the color of his skin. I have a dream. I want you to have a dream with me. I want you to see a place, this community, the community that you live in. I want you to dream for it to be just a reflection of all the beautiful people that are here today. I want you to dream that your state, your region, your community, and your world will be a difference. I have a dream. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Arthur Sheffield. I'm a board member for the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you all for coming out and joining us this evening for this event, our third annual event in partnership with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. I'd like to bring up our next speaker, who is Mr. John Holtz, as a representative of Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance.
Thank you, everybody. I'll be brief. As you can see by this program, it's like a airline flight schedule. It's down to the minute, and we're a little behind already, but really glad that you're all here this evening. It is a wonderful event. It is so important. It was about 3.5 years ago that Tarnisha and I were having lunch at one of the local restaurants in town, and really had this idea. We had this idea of putting something together meaningful. It was like pushing a string up a hill and really leveling the playing field for our region, for our community. The economic playing field is uneven, and you're going to see some great panelist discussions tonight where we are really rowing in the same direction to do exactly that. First, I want to do a shout out for that delicious food we have tonight. We are supporting Black-owned businesses, Perry's Original Roadside Barbecue. So a round of applause to them. Thank you. It's their second time as part of this event. Last year we had J&J's. We want to continue to support Black-owned businesses. The food is amazing. Their hospitality is amazing. They've been so wonderful to work with. And also, if you flip over your program, you'll see all money. So the food is free, but if you wouldn't mind on your way out, reaching in your wallet, little donation for Rabonia, the folks up on the northern edge of Manatee County, really forgotten after the last hurricane came through. They've been flooded out badly, and these folks could use our assistance. And together, you're going to hear from the panel today, the last panel discussion, how we can really pull together for crisis management. So thank you very much. I'm going to get out of here right now because I'm off schedule already, but thanks, guys.
Good evening, and would like to welcome you on behalf of the Manasota Black Chamber, particularly our executive board of directors, and our CEO Tarnisha Clyde. Vision may start our visions may start with individuals, but it takes teams, it takes communities to execute visions. So we like to welcome the teams, the community that support us as small local minority businesses. We could not do what we've done, and we couldn't do what we do without you and without the support of our community. So we want to welcome you, and we want to continue to get better at what we do. Thank you.
So as I mentioned to the group prior to you guys coming in, I'm a church girl. I believe with all my heart that Jesus loves me. Can you guys come closer? I feel like you guys are so spread away. We're going to be a family during this time. So please come up. Please come. Yeah. We're going to have a real intimate conversation. In order for us to do that, we need to come closer so that we can get to know one another on an intimate level and then have some real good conversations, right? You guys are fed. That was intentional. My family always said that's the right way to someone's heart, is feeding them some good food. So on the slide here we have, and we can go up 2 slides, please. Right here, I had the opportunity to get tagged in an actual an effort that took place during Hurricane Idalia. And ironically enough, our community seemingly did not get hit directly, indirectly, but however, we really did. And this is the pictures when I got the call of Rabonia. These pictures really pierced my heart. These are our community members that were inundated. This stop right here, this one right here really did it for me. If you see this, you'll see an African-American man, elderly man, helping a white elderly woman. That's community. But the community is in that water and is drowning. Do you guys know why? They're under the sea level. And even though we didn't get directly hit, this community was directly impacted. So that's some of the conversations we're going to have today. Why is it that this community, seemingly our Manatee County area that didn't get directly hit, but this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing and we're still dealing with today? It's a problem. Underserved, undercared communities. It's my community. I'll cue up the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarnisha, for those poignant words. Hopefully, everyone will keep Rabonia in their hearts and minds going forward. The community is really in great need of assistance. Any help you can provide will be greatly appreciated. Our first session this evening will be on the Black Chamber of Commerce across the country. That is a particular issue that is of great importance right now, particularly within the African American community. The dollar circulates less than 1 time in the African American community. That is an issue that we must resolve, and hopefully these chambers of commerce can help us to do that. I'm of the belief that a rising tide lifts all ships. So if we can create a fertile economic ecosystem that helps all businesses, I think it will definitely resolve a lot of the challenges that are faced by minority corporations, business owners, entrepreneurs. And if we can also, in partnerships like this with Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance and other chambers of commerce, build bridges and make inroads with our allies out there, I think it's an opportunity for us to improve the economic system, throughout our country and throughout our community. So with that, I would like to bring up our panelists for the evening. Please forgive me, I am reading off of my phone. Our first speaker this evening will be Mr. Charles DeBow. He is the president and CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Mr. DeBow has focused his efforts on challenges facing small businesses advocacy, and opportunities, along with addressing operational challenges facing nonprofit organizations. He's the president of the NBCC, which is dedicated to economically empowering, sustaining African-American communities through entrepreneurship, capitalistic activity within the U.S. and throughout the African diaspora. Thank you, Mr. DeBow. Our next speaker will be panelist will be Mr. John Harmon. He is the founder, president, and CEO of the African-American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, and he has quite a personality.
Amen. It's not, is this an event or a funeral? Loosen up, man.
John serves as an advocate for over 1.1 million African-American residents in New Jersey and 70,000 Black-owned businesses. He ensures that policy at all levels of government provide fairness, equity, and access to a level playing field in the marketplace. Thank you for joining us this evening. And our third panelist will be Mr. Jamal Sowell. He is the past president and CEO of Enterprise Florida, as well as he has served as our Florida Secretary of Commerce. He currently serves as a member of the Florida Defense Task Force and is president of Business Solutions at Indelible Solutions. Thank you. And our final panelist needs no introduction, our very own Ms. Tarnisha Clyott, who will speak on behalf of the Manasota Chamber of Commerce and all that we are doing in this area to try to improve the conditions and opportunities for success within the Black business community locally.
Test.
I was raised right, John.
I need mine.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. John, we will try to be a little lively for you. You know, we're not quite Jersey, but
We'll get
see what we can do. Now, if each of you could just sort of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your respective industries in your states, and tell us some of the things that you believe would be helpful here in the Sarasota-Bradenton area and throughout Florida things that we might be able to implement and adopt to improve our economic opportunities here.
I guess you guys are gonna, okay.
Just raise right.
I was. Amen. I'm Tarnisha Clyott. I guess I'll come from two different perspectives. I actually am the founder, CEO of the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce, but also have the privilege of serving as the Business Development, Marketing, and Community Relations for Ducon LLC, also Plumbing Division, which is an African-American-owned firm. We self-perform about $15 million of work, and we also partner with larger companies, construction manager firms, as we do have our one of our teaming partners here, which is Barton Mallow, who's internationally known throughout the international areas. So what I have seen from that lens, and then from a Chamber of Commerce lens, locally, we have a lot of work to do, just to be honest. I drive to Tampa, Pinellas, and even Pasco and Polk County. They have a lot of opportunity for minority participation. Here locally in Manatee and Sarasota County, it's not as a vibrant thing that they do here. And so it does present the challenge, as I mentioned, I have to drive there in order to have work and be able to be successful. And I think that's a disservice when we're right just in the Tampa Bay area. And it's a regional tri-city. So that's my perspective from the local lens.
So I'm delighted to be here. I'm from New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, the capital city, and I'm privileged and honored to be the founder, president, CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. And as the moderator said, there's 1.2 million Black residents in New Jersey out of about 9 million in the state. and north of just shy of 90,000 black businesses in New Jersey. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit so you get a full perspective. Also, involved with Chuck with the National Black Chamber. I was previously the chair for the National Black Chamber a long time ago. Getting a little seasoned here. But recently we established the New York State Black Business Alliance, which is a chamber, it's an affiliate of New Jersey, and I'm on the board of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the largest business federation in the world. But when you unpack those, say, 90,000 black businesses, we still have the highest poverty, the highest unemployment in New Jersey, the black demographic. Home ownership is about 35% versus about 76% for whites. The net worth for blacks in New Jersey is about $17,000. Median net worth, and for whites is $322,000. So, there's a wide disparity. And so we have our own row to hoe, if you will. So we're in constant discussions about, clearly we're better together, and black people cannot be successful without leveraging the full economy, the full ecosystem. And whites cannot realize their true potential without leveraging blacks. If you look at sports, it's evident, 75% of the NBA players and similarly NFL players are black. So they are providing value to the bottom line. Our consumer spend as a nation is between $1.6, $1.8 trillion. And if you aggregate that number and you put it in GDP terms, the black economy is larger than Russia and Brazil. For me, it's about acknowledging where we are. I think that's where we start. And then you figure out a game plan to get in a better place. There is a value proposition that blacks have for the U.S. economy, have for Florida, but it starts with acknowledging what our contributions were to make this nation great. If you look at the monuments in Washington, the White House, the U.S. Capitol, blacks built those institutions. So I look forward to the conversation.
There's so much that we could be talking about to inform you and to share. I'm Charles DeBow. I'm basically the second president, CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, which is celebrating our 30th year. The chamber was founded and you could say conceived by my sister and her husband, Harry and Kay Alford. And we are the first federation for black chambers of commerce. There was nothing 30 years ago. And there was no advocacy, no organization that was dedicated to education, training, support, communication on what is going on and where are we in the universe or in the scheme of doing commerce within our society. The mission of the National Black Chamber of Commerce is to economically empower through entrepreneurial pursuits. And that's a big, but it sounds kind of general. We're based on the philosophy and the teachings of Booker T. Washington, and those are rooted in that a strong community is measured and bonded by the commercial activity that happens in that, which is very much what we are experiencing and seeing in a day-to-day life, even though we may not realize it on the front, but that's America. It's a capitalistic society, and it's very much self-empowering. Our organization evolved from an earnest and simple focus on government contracting. We were founded in the state of Indiana, and there was a strong focus because of Harry Alford's background with state procurement on the state level. And he was hired by then Governor Evan Bayh to increase those numbers for, at the time, minority black principally, and then came Hispanics, and it was later that white women were also considered minorities, and of course the veterans and all that, but it was essentially something that grew out of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And under President Johnson, there was a observation and a need that post-World War II, how we could become more of a part of society, and then with the civil rights movement and the other things that were going on, that it kind of got to the point like we weren't asking for welfare as much as we were asking for an opportunity to compete, to get in the game. And that's where the education and understanding the game and how and what, because there's so many of us that felt like, why aren't we getting the opportunity when we didn't understand the technical part of it? And in many cases, it's easy to want to identify that as a racial issue. But before we can skip and jump to that, we got to look at ourselves and say, are we ready? And so the chamber itself really focused on that technical, that education, that support, the communication, as well as we still had to go in there and say, hey, we meet all the criteria and the numbers aren't matching up with what we represent. So in that, you end up becoming not only a constituency of the business owners themselves, but as other chambers or other communities said, we want to do the same thing, other chambers began. And in that, eventually the corporation said, yeah, we want to talk to you guys. We want to be diverse, or we want to understand. And then we've got this big stick that John just referenced about what our consumer spending power is. And so we can go on, but with that, relationships with government, and then even out of that came other countries coming to us and saying, we want to replicate this economic model, this vertical that you have on how we take and empower and embellish and develop local content. And that's what you're seeing. A lot of what were once considered third world economies are now emerging economies. And those are the places where everybody is trying to go and try to be as we talk about where do you go with your business? Where's the new market? What's going on? Because there's a whole nother conversation we could have about what is the state of the world we're in now? What is the reality? Because it's been changing. And just when we think we went through a whole period that led up, it was started with the dot-com boom in this millennium, and then it kind of emerged into whether a corporation that wanted to do business with small businesses really had application for utilization of the internet. And then it evolved even beyond that to where finally Apple comes out and there's all these apps and things on your phone, and suddenly small business and entrepreneurs and online businesses had application. You could be accessing to the market. That evolved, and that went up to where we had a whole economic curve leading right up to the pandemic to where it was peaking, and there was bundling of contracts. So anyway, I could go on and on, but
Amen.
the point being at this point right now is that brings us here today. And I'm gonna drop one more thing. We know you need help here, and there's a reason that we're here, and there's a reason that this chamber and your organization is asking questions and where's the help? Who cares? What's going on? Well, we're very aware of it, we're paying attention, and that's part of what this dialogue's about.
I'm Jamal Sowell, so this may tell my age. I just turned 41. I'm gonna talk about three things: ownership, Puff Daddy, and Master P. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So essentially, I went to the University of Florida, where I was the student body president, board of trustees, then did grad school in Massachusetts, went to the Marine Corps, captain of the Marine Corps, went to Afghanistan. Then I worked back at UF at the right hand to the president, chief of staff to Tampa Port. Then I was the secretary of commerce for the state of Florida. I did all that, but I never really made money. It was great experiences, great backgrounds, great degrees, tons of articles, I mean, great stories. I was a Renaissance man, exciting, but I had never really built wealth. So I now work for a company called Indelible, founded by two Florida A&M graduates who are FAMU graduates or CPAs. One is named Michael White, right here from Sarasota, Newtown. And you know Michael, and then obviously his business partner Joshua Hay, and they had a vision as CPAs to start their own company. They came from the umbrella of KPMG when it comes to disaster recovery firms, where there's IT work that we do, healthcare consulting, and they had the vision to start a company where they started as subs for McKinsey and big names, KPMG, but then it grew, and with that growth came to about 200 to 300 employees. So as I was leaving state government, for those who know the correlation of what I said, those like Suge Knight and Puff Daddy would hire people, but they never really paid them. And I'm saying my age. Master P would not only pay his employees, he would give them ownership, because that was the key to the future. It wasn't just getting paid, was to have ownership, or at least having somebody teach you how to be an owner. And that is what Indelible did for me, is why I chose them out of all the offers I got in state government as I was leaving, because they had a vision to empower their workers, to show them how to be owners, to show them how to do contracts on the local, state, and federal level. And that is really the key to success, because now you get to hire people in your community in Palmetto, in Newtown, and hire people who you grew up with in your same church, same mosque, same synagogue. And so all the experiences are great, but if you don't have ownership, you can get fired tomorrow. And that is what it is. You can't be mad about it because you're not the owner. So with the experiences that I've had, that's kind of what I want to stress to my peer group, those who were born in the 80s, those who grew up listening to Tupac, Master P, No Limit. Again, some of you all may not know who those people are, but I know, Tardisha does. But the idea of it today for me and my goal is to really stress ownership and really getting that mentorship from people, from companies who want to empower you to be an owner, and that's why I work for Indelible Solutions.
So just to bring it back in from my lens, I was trying to follow instructions. But a little bit more I think is going to be key and important for us for the local side of things. When we started the Manatee County Black Chamber of Commerce, there was no Black Chamber of Commerce in our area. And I actually was with the school district at the time, probably 14 years in, 11 years in. And this was 2007, around 2008, 9. And you guys know that was the recession time. And so with the school district, that's no different than the other. I was laid off. I thought I was doing a great thing by going to school and getting a degree and changing a field, staying in the field, but changing in a position. And my seniority date started over. It was at that time that I found myself homeless. I had got a degree that my family always said, get a degree and then you can, change the world with that. But in education, you don't make money at all. And there is an underserved, underpaid experience or sector. So hats off to all of those educators that are out there. But to move forward, when I was there, the Lord spoke to me clearly as you guys are speaking that I needed to start something as it relates to business, and this is prior to the layoff. So I started selling Mary Kay, and I started doing that, but I was trying to find people that looked like me to sell my products to. I could not find anyone. So I did go to networking events, and those networking events did not yield me any sales because I was an African-American woman, and clearly I didn't identify with the population that was there. It was at that time that he spoke to me and said, you gotta make a change. In order for me to feed my babies, in order for me to be in a place where I can really sustain myself, I had to find that. And I found myself traveling throughout the Tampa Bay area, keeping in mind that I had just lost my job and I was one paycheck away from being homeless. So at that time, I'm traveling around, absorbing gas. I had just brought a brand new car, this, that, and a third. And I said, we've got to come up with something. And it was there that I connected with individuals in the community, and we started doing a Black Entrepreneurs Club. We quickly plateaued, and we started to do some research, And again, something just dropped into me, and I found the National Black Chamber of Commerce. I called. This man picked up the phone. I had called the U.S. Black Chamber. I had called another lot of different other Chamber of Commerces out there. And I, kind of went through my spiel, like, I started this Black Entrepreneur Club. We really don't know what we're doing. We just need some help. We need some directions. Can you help? He says, absolutely. It was there that the direction was given to us of what we were doing, how we were doing things, and you really did identify as a Chamber of Commerce. It was that time, it was about 2010, 11, and we started doing some research, and we said, we have to start a Black Chamber of Commerce. Doing some surveying throughout the area, Manatee County never had a Black Chamber of Commerce. We got a lot of pushback, death threats, people calling us saying, you're providing exclusion, you're actually separating versus bringing people together. And it was funny because when I went on the websites, nobody looked like me. That was in leadership. No one. So how is it that I can go to an event and feel safe and feel like I can really be something and sell my product if I don't identify with anyone that is there? So fast forward, if anybody knows me, you tell me that I can't do something, I'm gonna show you how we're gonna actually get it done. So with the direction of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, we started, and we obviously started with 0 members. By the time we came down, you guys came down and did the ribbon cutting, we had 30 members. From there, we actually went from 30 to almost 100 members with the Manatee County Black Chamber of Commerce trade. And with that, we just thought about, how do we expand? We quickly knew that it was something that was hot, it was fresh. People were, the buzz was there. And we bought several names. We bought the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce, completely bought everything that was out there as it relates to the domain, did our EINs. We took everything. We also took another couple names, and I won't put it out there because that's still on the horizons, but we just knew we had to expand. And it was those efforts. We have some of the founding board members of the Manasota. Simone's in the back. Hello, Simone. And then Ernie DeBose, who was just up here. And we brought into a territory of Sarasota. Now we have over 200 members. We have corporate members. We have individuals that contact us to sit down with us to figure out how do we leverage the minority participation. So as I toss it back over to the gentleman, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that it is necessary, the Black Chamber of Commerce. Oftentimes we hear, why is it a separation? Well, until our community reflects the actual participation in the dollars, then there is a need. We have to leverage every opportunity, because if we don't, we're gonna still see those same crime rates, right? Because they don't have the opportunity. The same people that's walking around that we pass by that we call homeless, but they're still a part of our community. This is the reason why we have that. Until we are leveraging those participation dollars is when I think we'll see change.
Just to dovetail onto what Tarnisha just mentioned, it is true, oftentimes around the country, Black or ethnic chambers of commerce are attacked, basically, and accused of being exclusionary. However, for me, I am being a fan of Booker T. Washington and his Atlanta Compromise speech, which oftentimes is seen negatively, but he said, we can be separate as the 5 fingers and come together to be one as a fist for matters of common good. So I see that economically. We can be separate as the 5 fingers in our various communities and come together to be one like the fist for things that concern us collectively, economically. So I think within the African American community, if our chambers of commerce can focus on job training, on business development, on establishing capital within our community, and build ourselves up within our own house, we can then go out and be good partners with the broader community. So that's one of the things I would like to see our chamber discuss a little bit about what sort of efforts are taking place within the Chamber of Commerce to build the community from within so that we can rise collectively to be able to venture out with the broader community. Because oftentimes I see companies will focus on strictly government contracts, oftentimes because they can't get workers in the community, and they don't see a high enough return investing at a grassroots level. But what sort of things are the chambers doing across the country to sort of alleviate that so that we can build our own community, water our own lawn instead of complaining that someone else's grass is green?
Well, I've just gotten the 2-minute warning over here, so I could talk about this all night because this is where I lived for the last 25, 26 years. So when I founded the Chamber of New Jersey, I didn't get death threats, but we got some of the same commentary. So I'm going to frame it up this way. When I said earlier it's about acknowledgement, you're either all Floridians or not, or you're either all Americans or not, because that's the mindset is going to take the win. It's all about value, a value proposition. Dr. King talks about, pick yourself up from your bootstraps and you had no strings or no shoes. But nonetheless, we have a history of making brick out of straw as a people. The perception is that we're less than, so we have to educate all the time. And so that's a way that we've built bridges in New Jersey. And coming in, this is not a charitable endeavor. This is about making this community more competitive and bringing the best team on the floor every time. It's not about charitable endeavors, it's about transformation. So I think if we can level set around those kind of topics, we can move forward. And that's what we attempted to do in New Jersey. It's been effective, and just got to continue to push forward. Check the emotion as best you can and try to keep the conversation high level, intentional, and drive it.
I'm just going to break it down to the
1 minute.
case study. We have a history. We've had strong communities. That's what, those of you who are familiar with Tulsa and Black Wall Street and what it was, that's a case study. That's an example of what happens when we do business with each other within it. And you talk about the black dollar or the cultural dollar. It's cycling within and doing business with. And the same dollar that you spend at your cleaners, the cleaners spend it at the grocery store. And the grocery store people are spending it with the barber shop or the doctor. And it cycles through your community because we're doing business with each other. A great example that is at the front of my mind is Eatonville, and that's Orlando. Eatonville was some of the richest, most valuable real estate within the community, within the city. And they started parceling it up for development. And there was no cohesive organization to buy land that was lending itself, you might be able to speak a lot more detail, that was lending itself to being vulnerable. And I think I saw it even on 60 Minutes or something, but there was it was worth like 100 million or even more at one point, and they didn't have the money to pay the taxes or to basically incorporate it or handle it. And it got down to where maybe it was 10 acres. And even still, those 10 acres are highly valuable. And so we were contacted by the people that were running the I don't think it's a municipality, running the organization there that was what was left of it, and they were looking to raise money. And we were like, that's your strategy? Well, when you look at everything going on around here, particularly, our driver just pointed out an $11 million penthouse in an area that had a footprint of maybe only a few acres. We see this going on all across the country where, like a strip mall, where there maybe are 20, 30 tenants commercially, that suddenly now become a mixed use where there's high rises and there's condos and there's office buildings and there's all these things. And what may have been worth 10, 20 million is now close to $1 billion. And other things are going on, like with churches. Black churches own some of the most prime real estate in most communities. And as the churches fall on economic challenging times, there are people coming in and saying, hey, we'll give you $100 million to just pack up and leave. I mean, near where I live in Maryland, I saw a church get torn down, and a school, and the community, and they were struggling. But they took the $100 million, and now there's over 100 condominiums in there that sell for $600,000 each. So we're having to seize and take the opportunity, and yes, it does require some degree of organization and communication. So that's kind of what's happening now.
On my background, I was raised in the Church of God in Christ, full Gospel Baptist Church, my former pastor, and I actually mentored Pastor Manuel Sykes is back here. And in the environment in which my family was raised in, Black Florida, Newtown, South St. Pete, Overtown, Miami, I learned the way that I was going to change the trajectory was to make partnerships and get mentors who did not look like me. I went to college, I joined the Jewish Student Union, learned some Hebrew, lived in Israel, joined the Hispanic Student Association, joined the Asian Student Union, and now I have mentors of all types because they have networks that I do not have. They have contacts that I do not have. So now, though I am engaged in a Black chamber, the idea of having mentors who do not have your background, who can open doors for you, that is now how you get the experience to then build wealth. Two of my great mentors are white males, one named Bernie Matchin, one named Paul Anderson, CEO of the Port. They say, come to learn from us to learn how to be a CEO. And that right there expanded me to their vast network of people around the world from all different backgrounds. So when we think about Black chambers, that's great, but also Tarnisha still does work with other chambers, other groups. So when you start to think about your business idea for ownership or capital for funding, there are networks and people who you may never be able to reach. So when you seek that mentorship, they may say no, or you have to ask again. When you seek that guidance, there's going to be somebody who could open a door for you that has a total different background than your own. So as you start to really contemplate about the future and wealth building, it just can't be just Black. It just can't be just one thing, because now you want to expand your horizon and have a large umbrella.
So, closing. To his point, so we have built a chamber in New Jersey, about 900 members. And to his point, 30% is non-Black, right? So we have a connection, a collaboration of financial institutions, about 35 to 40. We have big pharma in New Jersey. We have construction firms. We have major corporations, but they need us just like we need them. And so we position members based on their offerings. So on one hand, we're looking to connect businesses for opportunities. In exchange, we're looking to connect the 1.2 million people for career opportunities or board seats. And then in exchange, we're also looking for corporate citizenship investment in underperforming sectors of society with programming. So that's how we make the state more competitive, by leveraging our talent, making our talent a value proposition versus looking at us as entitlement spending or a drag on the balance sheet.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yep. Ending our panel.
Yes, thank you very much. I have now completely ruined Tarnisha's schedule. All right. Thank you, everyone. And for our next panel discussion, I would like to bring up Deshaun Hines, host of our next portion.
Good evening, good evening. I'm not as tall as he is, so I'm gonna try to squeeze this down just a little bit, so bear with me here. It's good to see you all. My name is Deshaun Hines. I'm with Hillsborough County's MBE and SB Division for their Economic Development Department, and I'm happy to be here. I'm here to announce today's panel on procurement. And so I'm gonna start by announcing Mr. Ernie Dubois. Did I pronounce that right? DeBose the second. He's a board member of the Manasota Black Chamber. Ms. Dennis Mitchell of Barton Malo Construction. I want to make sure I point this out. I did a little bit of research on this, and they are #1 on Crane's Detroit business for 2022 as the largest general contractor for that list, bringing in over $3.3 billion, that's with a B, in revenue. Just want to point that out there. Also, it's Terry Daniel, Assistant Vice President of the Office of Supplier Diversity at University of South Florida, right here, this wonderful place. And that's the panel that I have here. I thought I had an extra name, but I didn't. Oh, and that's our panel. Please give them a round of applause, please. So from my understanding, there's a relationship up here. So Ms. Terry, would you mind explaining to the audience the relationship that you all have?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It is amazing to be here this evening. I want to first bring you greetings from the University of South Florida, President Rhea Law, Dr. Holbrook, and we are so excited to host you this evening for this amazing event. Tarnisha, thank you so much for the invitation to be here and to just kind of give you some information about USF procurement and some of the things that we have going on. As you know, we have a lot happening right now. And both of these folks that are sitting on the panel with me are key partners to what we are doing at USF. As many of you know, we are here at our Sarasota campus. We have several campuses. This is one of them. And we're building a new student housing facility here. First time. We have not had student housing on this campus before. And so this is exciting for us, exciting for our student body, and exciting for the community because we want to make sure that we have participation from our community on that project, right? And so we have some partners that are assisting us with that. As you've probably heard in the media, we're building a new stadium on the Tampa campus to the tune of about $350 million. So it is incredibly important that we ensure that there is a significant level of participation from our small and diverse business community on that project as well. And so the seat that I sit in as the Vice President of Supplier Diversity is to ensure that we're working with that team. And there are a lot of details to continue that we still need to continue to work out around these projects. But Barton Malo was awarded the construction management contract to build the stadium for us. And so Dennis and I have been working together. Ernie is also a part of that team as well that is helping us to build out that stadium. So we're excited about this partnership because it means economic inclusion for our small and diverse businesses right here in our community. We have a long runway. A long runway. And like I said, a lot of details that we're working out together. But that kind of defines our working relationship together. We are working to build out a diverse business utilization plan for that particular project. And I don't think I could have asked for better partners to do that.
I love that. I love that. Not supposed to be causing any tears up here, ma'am, but because this is about procurement, Majority of the question will be geared towards that. So one of the questions I have is, how important is it to know your industry and the environment you're entering? We'll start with Ernie.
I always go ladies first.
Oh, sure thing. Well, we'll start with that.
You really want to do me like that? See, if you can
I'll
tell,
let
we
you
really do
ladies
have a tight working relationship.
Dennis is from the D, so I'm careful. People from Detroit,
I am from
you know.
Detroit, and I flew in just for this event to make sure that I was providing a level of support around supplier diversity to this campus, to Terry, as well as Ernie, because in my role at Barton Mallow, I oversee supplier diversity nationally, and that covers about 10 states now. And what that means for our organization, which is now at about $5 billion in revenue, we have the ability to source a lot of contracts to small, local, and diverse businesses across the country. And what that does is that puts me in a position, and I now have a team as well, that supports me in making sure that we're communicating what those procurement opportunities are, but more so educating the community on how those procurement opportunities come to be. So it's one thing for me to come out and tell you, hey, we're gonna bid out steel, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing in 6 months on a project, but what does that really mean? So my team is really focused on spending time in the community with partnerships, not just with our clients and our minority partners, but also with chambers of commerce as well, to really spend that time working through a bid proposal. Sometimes companies just need to be educated on how those proposals come together. What do you need to do when you're preparing to pre-qualify for a company like a Barton Mallow? Well, you have to have your financials prepared. That's not always the easiest thing to do for a small business. You have to have access to bonding in some instances. You can't get bonding if you don't have the projects, which ties back to financial. And you have to have the workforce, so you have to have a strong crew available so that you can perform and continue to get work with companies like ours. So I spent a lot of time just kind of thinking through that process. I started my career 20 years ago at a minority-owned company and spent the first 8 years of my career there. So I understand that side of the game. So for me to be in the seat that I'm in now as the youngest Black executive at Barton Mallow, it's very important for me to spend time in communities that reflect what we're really trying to do as an organization. So we build people, projects, and communities, and what that means to me may look a little different to other executives at the company, but I take my role very serious.
So I'll attempt to address the question with, from my perspective. I think as a small business, it's very important that you understand your industry. Number one, because of credibility. I'm introduced to, and I have a lot of small businesses that approach me, entrepreneurs, heart in the right place, some experience, but they don't quite understand their business, don't understand the nature of construction or even what they do. It's like, I may ask, well, what exactly do you do? Well, we do cleaning and we do painting and we do drywall. Okay, how many employees do you have? Well, we have 2. Okay, I know better than that. I know you can't do all those scopes having 2 employees. And so knowing your industry is very critical to your credibility, particularly in the construction industry. The construction industry is very relational. It's about relationships. It's about project execution, like what portfolio have you built, and then it's about financials. And if you don't know your business, if you don't have the credibility to build the relationships, to execute projects, at least in our industry, you won't go very far. So it's very critical as an entrepreneur that you understand your industry. Number one, just to build credibility and have foundation for relationships.
That's great. So one of the things I found is with this group, we have a unique perspective. So I work in the government sector. We have subcontractors, prime contractor, and educator up here. So from each of your perspective, what are some of the key factors you feel would best help minorities succeed at your individual level or your area of expertise when it comes to the procurement process and more?
I'll kick it off. Exposure. Exposure is big. You know, one way we built our business is partnering with larger construction managers, right? Construction is one of the most capital and credit demanding industries there is in the world. You can't just start a construction company and go out just with no money, no capital. You have to build that over time. Most construction companies are generational. It's, you know, Mr. So-and-so back decades ago, even centuries in some instances, started a company and he passed it down and they got deals based on relationships and opportunity. So it's a hard business to tap into. And so exposure, the way the vision was given to me to grow our company was to partner with larger companies so that we can get exposure. Well, first I started in corporate America. First 9 years of my career working up to a vice president for one of the largest builders in the country. I decided to waste their money before I started to waste mine, right? Make mistakes on somebody else's dime. I actually made them a whole lot of money, so I don't feel bad for the experience I got there. But you know, learn on somebody else's dime so that you can master your industry, get exposure to the business, become an expert, become a master, and then step out in entrepreneurship, get exposure to projects. And so to fast forward, exposure has been critical for us. The way I met Terry was through, again, partnering, going after projects with the partner at USF, hustling, just working the relationship, wanting to get to know her and wanting her to introduce us. So that exposure is key. Each industry requires a different method to exposure. But what it did is partnering with larger contractors the last 10 years is it exposed me at an executive level to contracts, to the financials, and to the people who make the selections for the projects. And then as we got exposed, you have to show and prove. I have to do what I say I'm gonna do. I have to prove that I know my business. I have to build the relationships, and I have to handle my financials. And then over time, you just chop wood, and you can turn that exposure into something. The issue that many minority businesses have is a lack of exposure. And it's a two-part thing. So having played football at UF, that history kind of gave me a pathway into some relationships in the state of Florida as a builder that other people who look like me probably wouldn't have, right? So that was my entrance into a lot of the relationships that I built early. You know, they want to talk football, I'll talk football if you're going to let me build a relationship with you. So that was my exposure. Each business owner has to find their own individual way to gain into those relationships. But it's critical that most people that look like us, particularly in our industry, it's very hard to get exposure, right? So you have to look for your opportunity. But you have to take ownership of getting that exposure. You know, I didn't just sit around and wait, well, let so-and-so call me. Terry, well, no, I showed up. I go to every event, not just for USF, school districts. You have to be present. You have to hunt to get that exposure. You have to just live, eat, and sleep it to get that exposure. You have to take ownership. You can't put it in somebody else's hands to give you that exposure. So it's a two-way thing. And people like Terry, and the reason why I have so much respect for her and we have such a great relationship is because in her position at USF, she is intentional about exposing businesses like mine to opportunities. She would call me over the last 5+ years. She would call me and say, hey, I think you need to show up to this event. Hey, we're having something. So-and-so is gonna be there. Can you make it? You know, those are opportunities that if you're in a certain level, if you're on the public side and you're responsible or you have insight or input on awarding opportunities, you have to try to provide that exposure. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to be intentional about getting relationships with folks like Terry, building the trust and building a relationship, because you gotta sell you first. Before you have projects, unless you have an iPhone that you've created or some gadget that people just can't live without, if you're selling service, people buy you first. And especially if you're starting your business. Nobody cared about the buildings that I built for Syntex, because it wasn't my money, it wasn't my exposure. They wanted to know what Ernie did, what Ducon did. And until we actually booked projects, I just had to sell me. I had to get people like Terry to trust me, trust that I'm gonna do what I say I'm gonna do, that I'm trustworthy, that I know my business, and it starts there. So it's that, back to the point,
Yeah, we got
that
to say
exposure.
something for the networking, Ernie. Say
Sorry
something for the
about
networking. All right.
So can I would also
Yes.
like to kind of piggyback on that, because relationships really are important. And so you always want to make sure that you keep that in the back of your head, but you also need to understand and know how an organization does business, right? And with the product, service, supply, construction, whatever that is, opportunity that you want to offer to an organization, it is incredibly important that when you come to an organization to say, I paint, or I do drywall, or I sell promotional items, understand how they procure those goods and services. At University of South Florida, we buy everything. We're a small city. And so when we look at our facilities and construction opportunities, it depends on what that opportunity is, the way we actually procure it. So it could be a continuing services opportunity where we're going to buy services from your firm so that you're on call for us. As soon as something may happen in one of our student housing facilities, we need to get somebody there right now. We have hurricanes, obviously, in this area. The roof could blow off. Students are impacted. So we need to have people that are on call right now that we can call to make sure that we're taking care of the needs of our students. We have 15,000 employees across the organization, so we need those services, and that's what we call continuing service. We also do major construction. Obviously, the stadium, we just built a new wellness facility. We are doing the student housing facility here. We just wrapped up a new honors college. We have a lot of major construction projects that are happening that are coming up. So how do we procure those? Are you coming to pre-bid meetings so that you understand the long runway that we're talking about and where those opportunities are? So when we are ready, you're ready, because we want you to participate in that. What are the pre-qualification requirements on these types of projects? How much do I need to be bonded for? Do I need a bid bond? Do I need all of these different things, especially in the construction services industry, is really important. If you're more of a professional services supplier, or like I do, like promotional items, I think I mentioned, how do we procure those? For instance, for promotional products, we also now have gone to competing those kind of on a continuing services agreement where we select 10 or 15 firms because we're procuring for all of our colleges and departments. We're procuring for athletics, the football team, the basketball team, baseball. All of those organizational departments order promotional supplies. So we want to make sure we have a listing of preferred suppliers that can support that. So that would be my advice, is to really understand what your product or service is, how you want to get your foot in the door. And if you don't know, that's what my office is for. We can help you navigate that process. We can sit down with you, schedule an appointment. It might not be tomorrow, because it's like 3 of us right now. But we will sit down with you. How many of y'all are coming to our Supplier Diversity Day on October 27th? What?
Everybody is now because they know about
Okay, I
it.
know everybody in here has a cell phone, right? Get y'all phones out. Let's see. Go to usf.edu/OSD for Office of Supplier Diversity. And when you get to the page, just kind of scroll down to the events at in the kind of the middle of the page, and it'll be a link to our Supplier Diversity Day and Business Symposium, which is on October 27th.
You gotta love it. Look how easy that is. So listen, if you do want more information, for the sake of time, we do have to go, but please, please, please stop by and make sure you see her so you can register for that
Please.
event. So for the sake of I do have one more question for you, Dennis, and I'm gonna leave it with you on a high note. So in 60 seconds or less, what is the most valuable thing that you feel that you can share with the audience? 60 seconds.
In addition to
No
coming
pressure.
to Supplier Diversity Day, I think that it's very important for people to understand not just the relationships, but also understand the importance of performance. So we want rock star contractors, whatever that rock star may look like to you, we want you to be that. I want you to be that, and I'm in the seat to work alongside companies to make sure that they're doing it. So if, like Ernie said, Terry calls and say, hey, you might want to come to the event, I'm the person that calls and say, you need to be at this event, and if you're not there, you're gonna have to deal with me. So, just understanding that when you have that open relationship with someone at a company in the space that can actually make decisions, you need to make sure that you're listening to them and taking that feedback that they're giving.
All right, thank you. That was awesome. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our next panel.
All right, everyone. In an effort to try to speed things up and get us back onto Tarnisha's tight schedule, I would like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors for the evening, Bank of America.
Alrighty. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. I hope you're getting some good information from the panelists. Just wanted to highlight that Bank of America is committed to supporting Black businesses within the local area by providing resources and access to capital. And we also have a local representative in Nicole Parker who sits on the Manatee Black Chamber of Commerce board. So thanks again. And if you ever have any questions in regards to your banking relationships, feel free to reach out to your local branch. We're more than happy to help.
All right, thank you again to Bank of America for all of your tremendous support towards the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to bring up our next session panel, which will be a discussion on Senate Bill 7, which was popularly known as the Stop Woke Act. Our host for this session will be Dr. Kelvin McCree, Chief Learning Officer of Laser Focus Leadership Solutions.
All right, good evening, everybody. Good evening. I am excited to be here with you and to talk about elevating this opportunity that we have, or at least dealing with some of the challenges that we have about the opportunity around HB 7. I want to introduce our panelists first. So let me pull out our names. The first one I'm going to go ahead and introduce is Jamara Clark. Jamara, go ahead, Jamara. All right. Jamara is a product of Manatee County and is the principal of Rolette Middle School Academy, which is a free public charter that focuses on academic excellence, arts, and leadership. He is from a family of educators in Manatee County. Jamar also serves as on the board of Safe Children's Coalition, which focuses on adoption and foster care services in Manatee and Sarasota County. He believes that all children can learn and provide students with tools they need for success in the 21st century. I also want to introduce Luther Wilkins. Luther Wilkins, give it up. Luther Wilkins, he is the president of the NAACP and executive member of the Manasota Black Chamber. He shared with us that he did 12 years in the military, so we thank you for your service. He is married for 26 years and has a tribe. He has 3 boys and 3 girls. And then I believe Bishop Manuel Sykes is here. Bishop Dr. Manuel Sykes, give it up for him as well. He is a native of Jacksonville, Florida. He's also a pastor of Bethel Community in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I'm originally from. Dr. Sykes receives his PhD in religion and society from Drew University. His dissertation was entitled The Rehabilitation of African-American Male Offenders. His study was based on a meta-analysis of the existing programs which prove effective in reducing recidivism and producing a life change. In 2010, Dr. Seitz graduated from St. Petersburg Theological Seminary with a D-Min in counseling and an ED in counseling psychology in 2019 from Argosy University. I don't know if our other panelist is here. Oh, she's awesome. Awesome. And so our other panelist is attorney Shelley Freeland. Did I say that right? Shelley Freeland, Eddie, of the former city of Sarasota. Give it up for her as well. Sarasota County woman, managing partner of Freeland Eddy Law Group. Let's all give it up for them one more time. And so I want to kind of open up with this. And so we, for those of you that don't know about HB 7, which is otherwise known as the Stop Woke Law, it was actually amended from the 1992 Florida Civil Rights Act. So I don't know if anybody knew that, but that was actually amended from the 1992 Florida Civil Rights Act as part of our work as the Chief Learning Officer for our company. That's part of the work we do, is driving an understanding for organizations and corporations on what does the future of work look like. And so that was the Florida Civil Rights Act under Section 760.0, which affected employment practices. So that's where the Stop Woke Law kind of was birthed out of. And just how many of you all knew that? So that's where the Stop Woke emanated from, that 1992 employment law. Just a little bit more background. It was effective July 1st of 2022, which essentially prohibits employers from subjecting any individual as a condition of employment to training, instruction, or any other required, and that's the key word, required activity that espouses, promotes, advances, and inculcates or compels such individual to believe any concepts identified below that constitute discrimination based upon race, color, sex, or national origin. So I just kind of want to ask a quick question from each of your perspective. We have different groups there, legal, faith-based, the chamber, and as well as middle school education. How has the HB 7, the Stop Woke Law, affected your constituency?
Well, from my point of view, educationally, not that this is the educator, but as a pastor of people who are in school, what I've found is that there has been an increasing effort to drown out the voices that's equivalent to the amount of African American scholars who are beginning to awaken our community in tangible ways to what they've been sleeping on all this time. And so the idea of woke is a term that existed in the 1930s. And because it was not a threat, you still had strange fruit hanging from trees, it was not an issue because it was not an intellectual issue. It was an emotional issue. We have been able to upgrade it to a intellectual issue, which is why now it's been met with such resistance, because critical thinking causes individuals, whether they're black, white, oppressed, or non-oppressed, to wrestle with the idea of people's humanity and what their actions, historically and present, has caused in those communities. There is a formula for poverty. There's a formula for crime. There's a formula for hopelessness. And it has existed from time immemorial. But now is the time that we awaken to it, and obviously they want us to go back to sleep.
Yeah, that's good. Good. Anyone else want to follow up with?
I'm a little afraid to follow. But such great comments. And I would also say, sir, as a preacher, you are a teacher, right? So I'm very grateful to be here. Jamar Clark, again, principal of a local a free public charter school in Manatee County, and how has this impacted my school in particular? How has this impacted education across the state? I think that is yet to be determined, right? I think that this conversation is important so we can make sure that our voices are heard and that we see some changes in the near future. I would say on our campuses, it's impacted us by the changing in standards, making sure that we are in compliance with whether it's books in our libraries or in our classroom libraries, maybe concepts that were being taught last year that now a teacher needs to rethink their lesson plans and making sure that they're not out of bounds with any topics that may be now seen as inappropriate. So there's additional professional development that needs to be done so everybody knows exactly where these lines are. I think the concern is people really don't know what's in the bill, right? And so now we're interpreting these ideas and we're figuring out how it's impacting us. And I think there's this sense of paralysis, so to speak, with teachers because there's a fear of if I teach this, if I say this, if I let a student read this book, there could be repercussions, severe repercussions, maybe legal or the loss of a job. So, I truly believe that all students can learn and have value and can add value, and creating a positive, safe, and supportive learning environment on our campus, teaching kids, life skills and the tools that they'll need to be successful in the future, critical thinking, as you stated again, sir, collaboration, communication, how to be a productive citizen in our community, and it to some extent seems like mixed messages that we're sending our children because some of the aspects in HB 7 are the antithesis of those core values that we're teaching into all of our children. So we just want our kids to feel safe and feel valued, all students, not just African-American students. And I would say that that's my main goal as an educator, and I think is the biggest concern that I have regarding that legislation.
So we've had the faith community, we've had now the traditional education community. Now we can hear from the legal perspective what has been that tension surrounding HB 7.
I think I would back up and say I am most concerned that people haven't taken the time to learn what's in the law for themselves. And they have relied upon the media, they have relied upon political parties, they have relied upon school districts, partisan PACs to determine what's in the law. And if you read the law, there are exemptions both on the employment side and the education side that allow employers and our schools to continue to provide diverse instruction. I'm one that likes to read exactly what the law said, so I brought it. And on the side of the employment perspective, with the amendment of the Florida Civil Rights Act, it says the exemption provides that the statute may not be construed to prohibit discussions of the concepts listed in the amendment as a part of a course or training, provided that such training or instruction is given in an objective manner without endorsement of the concepts. That gives the employer the ability to include training that may discuss DEI principles or principles of diversity and inclusion in a way that, as the statute says, it's objective and it's without endorsement of the concepts. So for me, as I talk to small businesses like myself, we look at what's in your employment handbook. What does your manual say? How do you make training opportunities available? The thing is that employers who were committed to DEI pre-amendment change have to have the same commitment to use the law to be able to continue the mission of their organization. In my mind, don't be a punk since the law's been changed where you won't do what you wanted to do pre-law because you had the ability to do it, but you just, for lack of a better word, didn't use your resources to find out what was in the law to make sure that as an employer you were applying it correctly. I feel the same way about school districts to the extent that they have not acquired good, competent counsel to interpret the law. The biggest thing that I hear from teachers is that we don't know what to do, so we're scared and we're not going to do anything. It's that fear and that paralysis that puts parents and children and districts in a place where education isn't happening because no one knows what to do and everybody's afraid to be sued. And in the meantime, our children are instructionless because there isn't this concept as to what's approved and what's not. And it starts at the head. The districts have to mandate that we are going to get professional development instruction, good counsel, whether that means external counsel or whatever we have to do to figure out how do we incorporate the law and what do we do to make sure that the principles that we were supportive of pre-law, we can still do that. The same thing on the education side. Under the change, it talks about PREA, and PREA stands for Parental Rights and Education Act, and that gives parents a cause of action to be able to bring an action against the school district if they believe that the statute has been violated. But what people also have forgotten is that it also gives them a right of action to advocate for the instruction that they want in the classroom. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who are suing because they don't like what's being taught. What about the parents who don't like what's not being taught? Those are conversations that we're not having. So for me, it starts with an understanding of what the law says and the willingness of districts and employers to come in and be educated on what we can do, what we can't do, because to be clear, there are things that you can't do now, but there are caveats and exceptions both on the education side and on the employer side. For the education side, it says training or instruction may include a discussion of such concepts if they are presented in an objective manner without endorsement. Districts should be telling educators this is the caveat so that there can be some support from a curriculum standpoint that doesn't run afoul of the law. And I think because there's so much fear behind this change that you have people just running around and nobody knows what to do, and it's crazy to me. So.
And she jumped like way ahead, so that's really good. There are three pillars, I believe, that are affected. One is education, colleges and universities, and then employers.
Right. Well, the expansion was now it used to be K through 12, and now it's K through 20. Correct. So that includes higher education. The other thing that's important is that this K through 20 is only for public institutions. So if you attend, teach, or support a private school, this statute does not apply to you. Make sure that your private school knows what the law is. If there are changes that are happening on the private charter side, or if you happen to be a church that is an education institution that's affiliated with a church that is private and nonprofit, this law doesn't affect you. But because nobody did their homework, nobody knows what they can and can't do.
Right. And Manasota Chamber, you kind of got to bring up the rear.
All right. Well, I am executive member of the Manasota Black Chamber of Commerce, but I am the president of the Manatee County NAACP. So I look at Stop Woke a little different than a lot of other people because I have to deal with the complaints that come from our citizens. And it is really affecting us, like the doctor said, we don't know the law. And if we don't know the law, I mean, we going from Stop Woke to where we was being realized of racism, of how we were realized how we was being treated, and now Stop Woke has included a whole peripheral of stuff, a lot of different things where we were when we first started. And you have to understand where I came from. I moved here in '93, and I was in sales, and I wanted to work for a black company, so I started working for the Tempo News. And in the Tempo News, I became the communication director. It's almost like the NAACP working for a black newspaper because you get all the same complaints, and then you still have to go out there and promote black businesses to a commercial. So I got to see both sides of it. And then I was a part of a guy named Lonnie Ward who started the Sarah Manor Black Chamber of Commerce. We started that in the late 90s also. That was one of the Chamber of Commerce. It was pushed back, but we got all the support we needed. We built a building right behind the Shell station, right up by McDonald's. There was a building built where the Black Chamber of Commerce in Sarasota was built. And we did a lot of things, but as Tanisha said, it was huge pushback. in Sarasota. And from that, I was one of the founding members of the Sacramento Black Republican Club, where we went all around Florida promoting Black awareness in the Republican Party. That was a great success. We set up almost 70 clubs from Miami to Tallahassee. To stop woke is totally different now. There is no diversity, no inclusion, or no equity. And when you start talking about it now in the schools, they're nervous. And in the workplace, they may have it on their books where they have equity training or diversity training, but they don't have to do it now. So it's up to them. I'm also a member of the United Steelworkers Union. So I get to see how the union represents workers also. It is affecting us, how can I say it? It's affecting us because we're not making enough noise. When the AP class was started to teach African American history, well, it was supposed to go into effect in July 2022, that was great. I was a part of that. And on our website, the Manatee County NAACP, we got all of those curriculums that study group had put together that was introducing to go into the classrooms. But Governor DeSantis decided to come up with his own curriculum, or had his own people put the curriculum together. And if you look at that curriculum that's being taught, it's not a bad curriculum, but it does, to me, when it comes to some of the religion stuff, it's indoctrinating. And they don't want us, and that was the biggest thing that they said about us, that our curriculum was indoctrinating the children. And we can't victimize to say, I'm a victim, and because of what your forefathers did, you guys are the people who did it. We can't say that no more. And we can't hold nobody responsible. This is what I'm thinking is happening in Florida. That's why the NAACP put in a travel advisor, because they feel that being a Black person in Florida, coming here, you could be discriminated against. Not saying you will, but you could be. So Stop Woke has changed a lot of things for the Black people in the community. And it ain't like we don't know what to do. Is that the people who are in charge, a lot of them don't know the law, and so they're scared. So as NAACP, I listen to a lot of the teachers who complain about, I got these children, I want to teach this. Some of them got their own ways of teaching it, and I'm in Osalo. If anyone has ever heard of Osalo, they actually have a school that now is teaching Black history every Saturday. That's going to be, and it's free. So if you get with David Wilkins, he's a local guy here in Osalo, where they are actually pushing the curriculum of teaching Black history. So I don't look at it as the business side of it, because all of my life is dealing with it, is being with going out, representing, fighting, and making sure that wrongs are made right. So that's what I do. If there's a problem, or you feel you've been discriminated against, or you feel you're not being treated equitably in that, most people come to the NAACP. And prior to that, they would come to the Tempo News and have a reporter to put light on that stuff. So it's always been fighting the issues, from the Republican Party to the NAACP. How are we going to fix it? The number one way to fix it is how it got here. How did it get here? Somebody said it. You got to vote. When let's leave him out. When DeSantis won, he won 51 to 50%. If we would have voted more, DeSantis wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking about Stop Woke. We wouldn't be talking about the AP classes. We wouldn't be no travel advisor. We would have had a totally different governor, moving with a totally different agenda. So how do we fix it? We motivate people to vote. We find candidates that represent us, and we find candidates that look like us that can get out there and represent us better. That's the only way to change that. We can talk about the laws, we can protest, but if we don't vote and get someone in there who make the laws and get lawmakers in there who care about us, all we're gonna be doing is 4 years from now talking about the same thing. And the reason I say this is not to stop Woke Act. It's what I've been doing since '96, from Sarasota to Manatee. And it's been involved with black businesses. Ever since I said I wanted to be involved with them, I've seen the discrepancies in inequality, in diversity. And we know that equity is something that we all strive to be, but it's really hard, okay? Thank you.
Great. Earlier, there was a through line about education, or there's knowledge gap. So how does, and I want to kind of go from different sectors, Dr. Sykes, I want to go with you first. What role does the church play in filling the knowledge gap, both in terms of understanding history and the importance of that history, but also how do you foster that knowledge within your faith community, given that these people are actually in the general population?
Well, first thing, a number of years ago, I started our school. It's a private Christian school. It gives us the latitude to teach our children God's way. The second part of that is, the Bible says you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free, which means then, conversely, if you don't know the truth, you'll be bound by a lie. So in our context, in my context, I'm very, very balanced in assuring that what I teach from the Bible is historically correct, which means then I have to unearth some fantasies, some distractions. I would use the word bastardization of Christianity that has come over the years. Understand that the Bible did not start in the mountains of Europe. The Bible started in the African Israel, the North African, and the area in that existed then where Jesus was. It then migrated northward. But what happens is when you have a dominant culture that takes over that knowledge, because they understand that knowledge, that fear of God, is what drives people's behavior, and they're able to change the language, then you have the same thing that ought to set people free, causing them to be bound by those very things. Language and imagery. They talk about in many of our older people's houses, you go to their house, they got 3 pictures. One is Martin Luther King, one is President Kennedy, and the other is a Jesus that looked like one of the Beatles. You see, imagery. And people can say all they want to, it doesn't matter what color he is. If it didn't, then he wouldn't be that color. Right. So we have to understand that in church, and I've had members of leave say you're too radical, but understand I owe it to God and I owe it to everybody, black, white, whoever, to tell the truth. Now, deal with that. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I won't be guilty of not studying to show myself approved, and, as it says, navigating the word like a ship in water, navigating it truthfully. And when you do that, you're going to have pushback. But it's hard to push back against the truth, especially when you've taken the time to study, to learn, and unearth certain things that you can meet those objections with in a critical and a strategic way. And you can look folk in the eyes and say, you're full of it.
Real quick, so we can get the great, hey, you guys can clap for that. So we can kind of keep it moving, so 60 seconds. Same thing in the educational sector. How do you feel, what creative things can you do to fill that skills gap, that knowledge gap?
I've been piggybacking on you a lot tonight.
You got 60 seconds. You're giving up 5 already.
Far from me. The truth, right? Yes, sir. The truth. I think it's important to start with the truth.
But I mean, very specific.
I'm gonna give you some
specific. All right.
The truth is, African American history is American history. That's the truth. The truth is, slavery was not an apprenticeship program, and there are no benefits to slavery. So that is not a religious concept that the truth will set you free. I think education, my parents taught me that education will set you free, and the truth in education is not only just for African Americans to learn. I think it benefits the diversity of our nation. So I just think going back to those history books and the truth is the most important creative thing that we can do.
All right. Attorney?
Um,
Very tangible, specific things that we can do.
We have to show up and we have to be continuing students. We can't allow media and third parties to educate us on what the changes in the law are. We have to show up at commission meetings. Speaking as a former elected official, it takes voters to raise voices to effect change. Parents especially have to understand from the education perspective what's in that law that applies to me, what are my rights. Employers have to do the research just as we put in funds for marketing and budget and professional development. This is a professional development issue at the highest levels of management in your company, is to determine, this is an HR issue. So the same way that we look at billing and budgets and hiring and firing and discrimination and sex suits, we need to look at what does this statute do for our business. So I think if we do those things, then we can work within the law to determine whether it is working, and then for the parts of the law that are not working, then we can advocate.
That's good. And I'll just kind of add, go ahead, you guys, yeah, good. Great, tangible. And I'll add just kind of in our corporate work is messaging, understanding the messaging and how the messaging may need to change in order to get that advocated and adopted in corporations. And so we found success in being able to do that. So everything doesn't have to be DEI, or now with DEIA with the 508 policy. So being able to communicate the importance of it and how it is a business decision and not simply just trying to get more color infused in your workplace. All right, real quick, same question. Real quick, very 60 seconds.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I can come up here and philosophize with you, but I don't know how to fix it. All I know is I got 6 children, and one of them is 16 years old. The rest of them are grown. So I try to leave an example for my children. So I can say if you want to make an effect, is be an example for your children. Be a voter. Be an informed voter. And if you inform them. You know, that is the key. They're going to follow what your parents do. And trust me, you know, when I was young, I used to smoke. And when I realized my oldest son was smoking, I knew I had to change my life. They're going to do what you do, regardless of how good they were in school, because my children were great in school. But they're going to follow what your parents do. So what I do is to be informed, is to be active at push civil engagement. That is our biggest thing, is civil engagement. Our children these days, you don't hardly see any civil engagement going on with our children. So that is the biggest thing, is vote, get involved, and be that example. Because me telling you how to fix it, I didn't get enough college to fix that. But I know our Lord and Savior, if we stay focused on being great, we'll be great. It's nothing can stop us. As my grandma say, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. Awesome. So if we all here for one reason, it is to change, or to come up with an answer to the change. And that's how changes start, is these groups, those organizations saying this has to happen, and it happens.
They're going to cut your mic off in a second.
No, don't do that. Thank you all so much.
So let's just kind of wrap this up. So number one, so some takeaways is number one, be civically engaged. Be engaged. Number two is understand the law and don't allow yourself to be informed by a second or a third party. The third thing is understand the law so that you can exploit the areas within the law. So the law doesn't say that you cannot teach DE&I. It's how you teach it, and it has to be taught objectively. It cannot be compulsory. And then the final thing for the church community is to be creative, even in the Christian education department. Maybe the church needs to be considering now is Christian education looks different now after HB 7. And so those are 4 takeaways that we can take as a community. You all are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you again to our panel. I'd like to now bring up for our final panel of the evening on housing disaster and recovery crisis. Our host will be Dawn Stanhope, CEO of Manatee County Boys and Girls Club.
Good evening. Thank you so much for sticking around with us tonight. I mean, all of these topics are so important, and you can see how each conversation really relates to the others in terms of what we need to do as a community to lift one another up and to really celebrate success. I'd like to bring up our panelists for the last discussion today, and you know, it's titled as Housing and Disaster Recovery Crisis. And housing could be a whole night's topic, right? So we're gonna like tailor it down just a little bit towards that disaster recovery crisis, which is definitely tied into the housing piece as well. So I'd like to welcome Aaron Miner, the CEO of Harvest House, up to the panel. John Thaxton, Senior VP of the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. John, are you here tonight? I haven't seen him. Oh, poor John. Oh, it's always good to hear from him. All right, he'll bless us another night. Bishop Latressa Jester, did I say that right? Latresa, thank you, sorry about that. Latresa is the Bishop of Full Gospel Cares, Gospel Baptist Fellowship, and is Jody Fisk here, the Director of Public Safety, Manatee County Government? No, unable to join. Well, see, this is how we're gonna have meaningful dialogue. We've got two amazing panelists, and what I'd like to ask you is to share a little bit about, as we're talking tonight about lifting up our community and taking care of one another, you know, there was really that passion at the beginning with Tarnisha talking about what's happened in Rabonia. And could you speak a little bit about the work that you're doing and the impacts that you're able to make and how we create opportunities for people to be visible in our community and to be taken care of? Aaron, would you like to start?
They know a little bit about me, but probably not.
Okay, Bishop?
So thank you. So I don't live in the county, so I work from an international perspective, traveling around the country, specifically training faith-based organizations on how to be prepared for disasters. And we choose the faith community because the church has an audience every Sunday. And we deal specifically from our organization with the predominantly African Americans. And part of the reason we started this was on the backside of Katrina, people came to church for help. And as much as the people were passionate, they were not trained. And so the resources did not get into the communities because people of color did not know how to be connected to the resources. And so unfortunately in this work, people perish for lack of knowledge, and the knowledge doesn't get into the areas where the needs are. And so we have a national campaign titled Changing the Faces of Responders, so that there are more African Americans at the table to respond to the work, so that they will go to the areas where the needs are. To be perfectly honest, oftentimes our communities do not get the help because we live in communities that people don't want to go into. And so we oftentimes have our hand out, but not enough African Americans are offering a hand. So we work because, as in relationship with Tarnisha, those areas never recover, because in the field of emergency management, recovery is get you back to the place you were in pre-disaster. So if your house was in flood zone, we're gonna put you in a shelter, but we're gonna put you back in the flood zone. So we don't repair the problem, we just get you back to where you were. So it's a cycle. And so we're working in a project really pushing, promoting resiliency, so that we can get you to a place where it's not just a task, but we can get you from a place of recovery to a place of wholeness, so that you're not back in that same predicament, because a lot of people don't have the resources, the connections to do any better than where they are. So they stay in the cycle. So we're working corporately with partners to really see if we can, again, get the people from just simply being at a place of recovery to a place of wholeness.
I love it. Thank you so much. Aaron, how do those partnerships really impact the work that you're doing at Harvest House?
Well, I would love to know my co-panelist here a few years ago, I was mentioning, if you know much about Harvest House, we were born out of a non-denominational church here in Sarasota, and we were blind for a long time, just, in the room, feeling things out. And partners put us on the map, gave us knowledge, gave us instruction. Churches, I grew up, I'm a pastor's kid, so I carry that chip on my shoulder. But there's all the passion in the world that meets every Sunday morning. And so I love when I met Latricia, that what she does and organization does, because to put that skills and that knowledge in the hands of people who really care, I mean, what you're doing is incredible in changing communities. Churches, back in the day, in towns, it was a church in the courthouse. I mean, that was the focal points of every community. And it's a little different today, but there are still churches on so many corners and really are still a pillar in their community. Harvest House, we have about 380 beds across Sarasota and Manatee counties, and we are the safety net in many of these instances, but 365, whether there is a disaster or not. But what we see is, and we know this preaching to the choir, that disasters unequally affects people of color, low-income households, and so about 50% of the families that Harvest House serve is a household of color. And that is, Sarasota County is 6% Black, I believe, recently, the recent numbers. Does anyone have them 6%? Was that right? Hey. And so, well, I don't need to go any further there. You know what we're talking about. And so these partnerships, what we do at Harvest House is bringing in partnerships for education for the people we serve. Our goal, 100%, is that a family or household that we serve never enters back in the system. And we know the only way they do that is to increase education skill level to increase income. We've talked a lot about, in indirect ways, access to money and bringing in money, procurement, and all the things we've talked about. It's about money. It's about building wealth. And starting to do that is how, and to have those skill set, that knowledge, those connections. And so that we're a conduit in what we do for anybody that we serve, whether it's queer youth or families or, it doesn't matter, adults with a history of addiction, incarceration, we're just a conduit to what they're looking to succeed. And if we can connect them and help them on their journey, that's our goal.
Thank you. Wow, that's just amazing. Really appreciate that. Thank you. As we wrap up tonight, I hope that we've inspired you to think about, when you leave the room, what can you do? What's that one thing besides putting money out for the donations, right, for Rabonia? But what's that one thing that you can do, maybe that's new or different, or something that you learned tonight that you can share with someone else? Because I know there's a lot more people who care about this community that aren't sitting here tonight for one reason or another. But I hope that you'll build those relationships with others in the space and then bring that back to others in your circle, in your network, and really help elevate these voices so that we can be working together and making a huge change in our community. And we can only do that by working together, which is why I'm so blessed and thankful, Tarnisha, to have you as a friend and to be invited to come here. And I want to ask if, on a parting note from our panelists, is there anything that you would like to share that you think this group would really be able to take with them and utilize in a new and different way?
I think one of the things that we're doing, I'm so honored to be connected to Bishop Sykes, is to create resource centers that are armed with knowledge of how to connect. And again, we don't just work in times of disasters. Our program is called CARE. But CARE is an acronym, Communities Actively Responding to Emergencies, so that it's ongoing, but that we can connect people, specifically of color, with resources. There's something called long-term recovery groups or long-term recovery centers or committees, and they work throughout the year, knowing who does what's their one thing. But again, we're not at the table. So when we connect with long-term recovery committees, so I think I would say, man, get at the table so that you can speak for the community, have the knowledge of what's available pre-disaster. We have this meme, the wrong time to learn to dance is when the party starts. right? So you got to know when you arrive. So we can't wait for the disaster to happen to look for partnerships. You have to be in the room before that happens. So, man, I think we just got to get in the rooms.
And I'll piggyback off of that is social capital, which is a lot what we're doing tonight. If you have a seat at the table, bring someone with you who doesn't. If you know someone who should know someone, connect them. It's so easy to send a quick text group or send an email to connect people these days. You don't have to go out. And so just use your voice, your position, your seat at the table to connect, to bring someone else along. As Ernie was talking about, making those connections for other folks if they don't have them. That's the role that I think all of us can play, and we all have a piece of that pie, so that would be my encouragement.
Awesome. Give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Please give them another round of applause. And yourselves, I appreciate everyone sticking with us this evening as we close our program. I'd like to bring up our Tarnisha as we start to enter into our closing song, Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come.
So before we do that, I want to bring up my dear friend John to come alongside with me. Time has been definitely well spent, but I want to highlight everyone that had come in to celebrate and sit on the panel. We had everyone that I've been connected to, and we talked about the network, and that network also is in your Rolodex. And it's important to stay connected. It's important to have relationships, and it's important to have friendships. John and I have been glued to the hip for the last 3 years.
We sure have.
And it is important to highlight him and his efforts, but not only he, we actually sat down and broke bread, and I think that's where it all started from, breaking bread.
Anna Maria Oyster Bar, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Ernie, you remember that?
Yeah.
We were sitting there, and from that, we were actually going after a project. We were doing an RFP in Polk or somewhere up in that area.
Somewhere like that, yeah.
But at any rate, talking about putting your money where your mouth is. And so John was so impressed about the work that had been done. He says, we have to do something. What can I do? And it takes every one of us to have that same aha moment. What can I do? So it's always opportunities to sit there and get information, but the real work starts when you leave out the door. What are you going to do? What's that one thing that you're going to be tasked with? Is it going to be connecting, bringing someone to an event, or reaching out and partnering that person with another person? Is it going to be purchasing from a Black-owned business? What are you going to do when you leave these four walls?
Is it going to be joining this chamber? We joined a couple of years ago, and it has been enlightening. I learned more in these events than I learned in those history books that have been vacated with history. They're gone. We learn more here, and we take that information, we take it back to our offices, back to our communities, get connected. As we learn in all of these panels, get involved, civics, voting, everything that we can do to elevate this community and bridge gaps, build unity, like it says up there. And it's just so important. This can't be a one and done, once a year thing. We have to keep the momentum going. As someone said, where's Terry Daniels? The runway. We need a wider, longer runway with big lights on it, and we got to keep her moving.
I think that's it. Before we close, and Chris, we love you.
Oh, hey, buddy.
I want to personally thank John Harmon, came in from New Jersey. Chuck DeBoe came in from Washington, D.C. Dennis came in from Detroit. Who else do I have? Bishop Sykes. We actually have been in Atlanta for the last week. Bishop and I flew in early at 2 o'clock. Bishop Jester and I was on the same flight this afternoon. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was flying in so you guys would not show up. But just Attorney Eddie, Freeland Eddie, thank you so much for all the work you continuously do, and you have been a true champion for this community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Kev, thank you so much for your work and all that you do for our community as well. St. Pete native, but also Polk County, just a wealth of knowledge as it relates to international DE&I work. And again, it goes back to always bringing in people that are subject matter experts and then that are smarter than you. You guys are way smarter than me. Cue music, please. I thought I was gonna get some music. That's why I was stalling.
Follow along on the back.
The words, if we can all stand together and just allow this music to resonate with us. We could can we turn it up? And all we're doing is just looking at the words and understanding what he's saying as he's singing.
St. John, ain't gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's too hard living, and I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know
Beyond the sky. Bishop, long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
Go to the movie, and I go downtown.
Sing, John.
Somebody keep telling me, hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will.
Thank you, guys. See you next year. Tangible things to take place and report back.